across the board, no matter where we are in history, you're going to find issues with cops. You're going to find issues with cops that are taking advantage of their position. So if you're a regular listener to the podcast, you all know how I feel about the police, which is, and let me break it down to people who don't know, I'm a supporter of the police. I'm absolutely a supporter of the police. But having said that, with my background, I've had an inordinate amount, inordinate relative to most people, I suppose, when I was a younger man, lots of interactions with the police. And so I have an opinion of the police based on my experiences with them. As an example, I've never not gotten a ticket when I was pulled over. So I know lots of people. Billy, wasn't this you telling me a story one time that you got pulled over and they didn't give you a ticket?
There's been a few times that I've been pulled over and haven't gotten a ticket.
You see, that's never happened to me. I believe I'm 23 for 23 or however many it is. But I've never not been ticketed anytime I've ever been pulled over. I've been thrown over the front of a cop car. I shouldn't say front. I've been thrown over a cop car, typically over the front, but also over the back on 4 different occasions. And on all 4 occasions, it's important to remember I'm just a tiny bit under 6'4". I've weighed about 240 pounds my entire life. And every single time the cop that threw me over the front of the car was half my size, tiny, small. And we've talked about this before on the podcast, small man syndrome, the kind of people that get attracted to be in the police. I know I shouldn't say a lot. I don't know how many cops the average person knows, but I probably know 3 or 4 policemen. I know 2 of them very well, both lifetime cops. So I have a lot of respect for what they do, and I have a lot of respect for the place that they hold in society and holding society together. So I think the police are important. I think they need to be there. I think they need proper funding. I think they need as many of them as makes sense to keep crime under control. I think that anytime that there are crime issues, you need to flood more police, not less. So I'm a big supporter of the police and what they do. But what I'm not, and what most people are, because society has taught us this, it's my same take as I have on the teachers, which is that we afford them a level of respect that they simply have not earned, or we afford them a level of respect before they've earned it. And so for me, I don't think that's warranted. I think that if you have 99 good cops and 1 bad one, you have 100 bad cops. So the cops and the thin blue line is something that I've never understood. In fact, I shouldn't say it that way. I should say that cops and the thin blue line is something that I've never agreed with. Anybody who doesn't know this thin blue line is this belief that cops stick up for each other. We've all watched television shows. We've all seen movies where, the cops, I don't rat. I'm not a rat. I don't rat out on each other. I don't rat out on other people. And so essentially what you're saying is if you work at a grocery store and you see the guy next to you that's working, helping stock shelves, and for every 1 can he puts up on the shelf, he's putting 2 in his backpack, based on this thin blue line, this brotherhood that the cops have, you don't tell anybody. You don't tell anybody that your workmate that you see standing next to you is robbing the place blind. I disagree with that entirely. Bad behavior is bad behavior. It should be rooted out wherever it is. It shouldn't matter,
especially in
who
law
you
enforcement.
What's that?
I said especially in law enforcement.
Yeah, I mean, it seems pretty trivial. You're right, Billy, relative to working at a Safeway and somebody stealing cans of pumpkin soup or something. That doesn't really register. However, if I saw somebody working with me that was stealing, I certainly would do what I had to make sure that the people in charge knew that, because ultimately that can come back and reflect on you badly. And I don't go in for this, quit being a stool pigeon, or you're going to rat me out. Yeah, just like I would anybody else. I work hard for my money and I don't steal. So you should work hard for your money and you shouldn't steal either. It's an ethic or a code that I think lots of people live by. This will a lot of people will understand what I'm saying and why I'm saying it. And to Billy's point, the fact that that might even be problematic to some people shows you what the police have been able to get away with for literally centuries at this point now. I mean, we're a couple of 100 years into this experiment here in the United States, and you would be hard pressed. Let's go back to, the 1830s, 40s, 50s. You would be hard pressed to find a major city as they grow. Let's start with New York, not having a significant police issue going all the way back those many years. Now, you go all the way back to the late 1700s and the early 1800s, and you find Tammany Hall, which was nothing but theft and corruption at a political level. Go to the 1960s in New York City, where they arrested a bunch of judges and cops and DAs for essentially on the take. And when I say I'm talking dozens, sometimes hundreds, then you go, this was in New York, then you go into the 70s and you have the same thing happen all over again. Bunch of, dozens and dozens of cops and dozens of DA and a ton of judges, and everybody gets rolled up into some big investigation, and away they all go. And then you go into the 1980s and guess what happened? Same thing all over again. It's like every 10 years, it's that corruption is rife since the beginning, essentially, of police departments, I think, for the most part, in the West. You get the same problems in London. I mean, that's been going on for hundreds of years. So across the board, no matter where we are in history, you're going to find issues with cops. You're going to find issues with cops that are taking advantage of their position by making money, by doing enforcement, by stealing, by running numbers, by running drugs, by running cover for people who run numbers and drugs, by running prostitutes or running cover for those that run prostitutes. I mean, it's been endemic, and yet they do it every generation, every 10 years, even more than a generation, every 10 years. So I can look at that objectively and say, that's not something I'm going to get behind. That's not something I can endorse. So I don't respect the police. But the flip side to this is the magic that the cops have pulled on us, which is the same thing that the magic that the teachers and the teachers' unions specifically have pulled on us, is this unearned respect that they are afforded, which then by society standards gives them a position above all of the rest of us. Like, we're not supposed to be questioned. We're not supposed to be questioned because we have the respect, because we're teachers. We're not supposed to be questioned because we have that respect because we're policemen, because we're doing this is my favorite. We're doing jobs nobody else will for money nobody else would work for. And it's like, well, why in the hell do you do it then? That's not, you don't get to use that as an excuse anyway. You don't get to use that as an excuse for stealing or lying or theft or running hookers or whatever it is, because you can't make enough money as a cop. Go do something else. Go be something else. If it's so important to you, as you all claim, go run and do something else. Disclaimer, lots of good cops. Not saying there's not lots of good cops. There's lots of bad cops. And like I said, one bad cop that all the other cops know about makes everybody a bad cop. So I have this take on cops that they don't get my respect based on my interaction with them personally and based on what I understand of their history without earning it. So there are some good cops that I respect a lot. Generally, I don't respect, nor do I trust the police any more than I would trust any other government institution, which you would be stupid to trust, generally speaking. Hey, my friends, I hope you enjoy what you're hearing. Do us a favor. Go out, like, follow, subscribe, and share the podcast, if you will. Help us out. Leave a comment. Go over to Apple Podcasts. Leave us that 5-star rating. It sure help us out, and we'd appreciate it. And as always, thank you very much for listening.